Some people sign contracts worth billions. Some walk away with nothing, and some hand over the future without even realizing it. These are 10 moments where the smartest people in the room made the dumbest decisions on paper. Blockbuster laughs at Netflix. In the year 2000, two men flew to Dallas with a folder and a pitch. Reed Hastings and Mark Randolph had built a small DVD by mail company called Netflix. It had 300,000 subscribers, no profit, and a $50 million price tag. They sat across the table from Blockbuster CEO John Antioco and made their offer. Antioco's team reportedly struggled to keep a straight face. Blockbuster had 9,000 stores, 60 million customers, and over $6 billion in annual revenue. Netflix looked like a rounding error. The meeting ended. The offer died. A decade later, Netflix had 200 million subscribers worldwide and was worth over $150 billion. Blockbuster filed for bankruptcy in 2010 with over $900 million in debt. The last store standing was in Bend, Oregon. It became a tourist attraction. Turns out, the joke had a very long punchline. Fox hands George Lucas the Galaxy. On April 13, 1976, 20th Century Fox sat down with a relatively unknown director to talk money. George Lucas was making a strange science fiction film the studio barely believed in. Instead of pushing for a higher salary, Lucas proposed something unusual. He would accept $500,000 less in director's fees. In return, he wanted the merchandising rights and sequel rights to the film. Fox executives considered those rights nearly worthless and signed without hesitation. Star Wars opened on May 25, 1977. By 1978, toy sales alone have exceeded $100 million. The sequels, prequels, theme parks, and licensing deals that followed turned those rights into a personal empire worth tens of billions of dollars. Fox had made the movie. Lucas owned the universe it created. AOL swallows Time Warner whole and chokes. On January 10, 2000, AOL and Time Warner announced a merger valued at approximately $165 billion. It was the largest corporate merger in American history at that point. AOL, still riding the peak of the dot-com wave, offered its inflated stock as currency. Time Warner, with its cable networks, film studios, and magazines, accepted. Within 2 years, the dot-com bubble had burst. AOL's subscriber numbers collapsed. The combined company posted a loss of $99 billion in 2002, the largest annual loss ever recorded by an American corporation. By 2009, the two companies separated quietly, like strangers who had never spoken. AOL had bought one of the most powerful media companies on Earth with stock that was already starting to expire. Yahoo rejects Google for $1 million. In 1998, two Stanford students named Larry Page and Sergey Brin approached Yahoo with an offer to sell their search engine for $1 million. Yahoo passed. The technology felt too focused. Yahoo preferred to keep users browsing, not searching and leaving. A few years later, Yahoo reportedly had a second opportunity to acquire Google, this time for $3 billion. The answer was no again. By 2006, Google's market value had crossed $130 billion. Yahoo's own trajectory went the other direction. In 2016, its core internet business sold to Verizon for $4.8 billion. A company that twice held the future in its hands decided both times it wasn't worth keeping. Microsoft pays $8.5 billion for a fading dial tone. On May 10, 2011, Microsoft announced its largest acquisition to date, Skype, purchased for $8.5 billion. CEO Steve Ballmer described it as a transformational move that would change how the world communicated across Windows, Xbox, and mobile devices. At the time, Skype carried $686 million in debt and was losing money every quarter. Competitors moved fast. Apple launched FaceTime, Google rolled out Hangouts, WhatsApp exploded across mobile. Inside Microsoft, a quiet internal project called Teams was already outperforming Skype on nearly every metric. By 2017, Teams had absorbed Skype for Business entirely. By 2021, consumer Skype had become irrelevant. Microsoft spent $8.5 billion acquiring a communication platform and then replaced it with one it built for free. Google lights $9 billion on fire. On August 15, 2011, Google announced the purchase of Motorola Mobility for $12.5 billion. The stated goal was to arm Android with Motorola's massive patent library. Larry Page called it bold. Wall Street called it expensive. Motorola was bleeding over $1 billion per year, its phones losing ground to Samsung and Apple with no recovery in sight. Google attempted a relaunch with the Moto X and Moto G. Neither moved the needle. Internal friction grew between the hardware division and the Android team. On January 29, 2014, Google sold Motorola to Lenovo for $2.91 billion, keeping only the patents. More than $9 billion had evaporated. A company famous for its algorithms couldn't solve the simplest equation of all. HP bets the house on autonomy. On August 18, 2011, HP announced it would pay $11.1 billion for British software company Autonomy. CEO Leo Apotheker declared it would transform HP from a hardware manufacturer into a software powerhouse. The morning after the announcement, HP stock dropped 20% in a single session. Analysts were skeptical. Internal auditors became alarmed. Revenue irregularities surfaced during post-acquisition reviews. Within a year, HP wrote down $8.8 billion of the purchase price, nearly the entire amount it had paid. Executives blamed Autonomy's leadership. Autonomy's leadership blamed HP. Shareholders were left staring at a bill neither side wanted to claim. HP wanted reinvention. What it got was one of the most expensive audit findings in corporate history. Bank of America buys Countrywide's catastrophe. In January 2008, Bank of America acquired Countrywide Financial for $4 billion, a steep discount from the company's previous valuation of $22 billion. CEO Ken Lewis called it a rare opportunity to enter the mortgage business at scale. What Bank of America actually acquired was a portfolio stuffed with subprime loans, regulatory exposure, and litigation risk that hadn't yet surfaced. As the housing market collapsed throughout 2008, the hidden liabilities began to appear. Settlement after settlement followed. Legal costs, regulatory fines, and investor payouts piled up over the following years, eventually exceeding $40 billion. A $4 billion bargain turned into a 4-decade payment plan. The deal that looked like a discount was, in fact, the full price, just spread out across a decade of consequences. Xerox builds the future, then forgets where it left it. In December 1979, Xerox invited a young Steve Jobs to tour its Palo Alto research center. The exchange was straightforward, a look inside in return for early access to Apple stock. What Jobs saw stopped him in his tracks. Xerox's scientists had developed a graphical user interface, a functional mouse, and a desktop environment that ordinary people could actually use. They had built it years earlier. Xerox executives remained focused on copiers and never moved the technology to market. Jobs returned to Apple and began building what would become the Lisa and then the Macintosh. Microsoft followed a parallel path. Both companies turned Xerox's shelved ideas into billion-dollar industries. Xerox held the blueprint for the personal computer age and filed it under irrelevant. Walt Disney loses a rabbit, finds a mouse. On March 4, 1928, Walt Disney traveled to New York expecting a routine contract renewal for Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, the cartoon character keeping his young studio alive. Instead, distributor Charles Mintz informed him that Universal owned Oswald outright and intended to cut Disney's per-cartoon fee from $2,250 to $1,800. Disney refused. Mintz revealed he had already recruited most of Disney's animation staff. Walt left New York with no character, no team, and no deal. On the train ride home, he sketched a new character: round ears, simple face, bigger grin. On November 18, 1928, Mickey Mouse made his debut in Steamboat Willie and became an instant sensation. Universal kept the rabbit. Disney built the most recognized entertainment brand on the planet. Some losses come with a hidden return on investment.